Beneath the old psychology building at the University of Minnesota stretches a long, cold corridor. Flickering fluorescent lights cast pale reflections on the peeling paint, making the walls seem as if they're breathing. At the very end stands a heavy steel door marked B7, sealed shut since 1979. Dr. Ellen Rourke slid a rusted key into the lock. The sharp metallic click echoed through the hall as the mechanism released. She stepped inside, and dust rose through the dim beam of light. The room was empty except for an old leather chair and an analog recording system mottled with green mold. Everything appeared untouched, as if time itself had stopped the moment the last person left. The gray foam padding on the walls had yellowed, blotched with dark stains of mildew. The air was so tightly sealed that her own breathing seemed to bounce back at her, heavy and slow. Ellen scanned the space, noting every detail in her journal. She didn't believe the rumors, the whispers about voices from beyond that the original research team once reported. To her, those were nothing more than the effects of sensory deprivation and the mind's desperate need to create meaning out of silence. In the adjoining control room, James O'Neill, a 53-year-old sound technician, waited by the observation glass. He had worked here since the 1980s, back when the experiment was abruptly terminated. As he powered the old equipment, the machines whined softly before lighting up, like some ancient organism stirring from a long sleep. Ellen requested a full systems check. Microphones, cables, tape reels, all decades old, yet functional. On the desk lay a dust-covered reel labeled Session 4, 1979. James moved to set it aside, but Ellen wrote down the serial number and sealed the reel inside a metal box. When the soundproof door closed for the first time in 40 years, the air inside seemed to solidify. Every trace of the outside world vanished. Ellen stood at the center of the room, feeling her pulse hammering in her ears like a distant drum. The red light on the microphone blinked on, capturing every breath, every faint shift of movement. Through the one-way glass, James adjusted the frequency levels, listening through his headset. The signal remained steady, but amid the static hum of white noise, he thought he heard something else. A low, irregular sound, almost like breathing, slipping between the rhythm of the machines. He removed his headphones and looked back at the monitor. Ellen was alone. The room was silent, utterly so. And yet, within that silence, something still seemed to be listening. The next morning, the room was prepared for the first official trial. Dr. Ellen Rourke sat in the center of the sealed chamber, her eyes covered with a layer of white fabric, headphones pressed against her ears and linked to the signal generator. Beyond the glass partition, James O'Neill powered up the system, letting the steady hiss of white noise fill the space. A thin, continuous hum like wind moving through the void between stars. Her goal was simple: to recreate the original Ganzfeld conditions and record the psychological responses that emerged when every sensory input was stripped away. Yet only 10 minutes in, the data began to drift. The frequency monitor displayed a secondary waveform, emerging at 19 Hz, far below the threshold of human hearing. James assumed it was interference from the outdated machinery. He adjusted the cables, lowered the gain. But the column on the monitor kept pulsing wildly, as if responding to the heartbeat of the room itself. Ellen kept her eyes closed, body loose and still. Behind the white blur of the blindfold, she began to feel the waves, each vibration brushing against her skin, resonating inside her skull. Time thinned, boundaries between sensations, blur. When she inhaled, it felt as though another breath, colder, wetter, moved in the opposite direction, sliding against hers. Through the glass, James tweaked the microphones. The white noise appeared stable, unbroken. Yet beneath its even surface, he caught something faint, a sound that didn't belong. It was breathing, drawn out, irregular, weaving between the gaps of static. He assumed it was a reflex from Ellen, until he looked at the camera feed. She hadn't moved at all. The recorder began running automatically, logging an unidentifiable stream of sound. The waveform flickered, unstable. The frequency numbers dipped lower, as if dragged down by an unseen weight. 19 H dual, H dal, 17 H dat day, 15 H dat. With each drop, the lights in the control room dimmed slightly, though the power level remained unchanged. Inside the chamber, Ellen's tinnitus deepened into rhythm. 3 even beats, slow and deliberate. Not from the headphones, from somewhere behind the wall. She noted it mentally, auditory hallucination induced by low-frequency exposure. But then she noticed something impossible. The rhythm was syncing with her pulse. And when she held her breath, the sound continued. James glanced at the clock. 17 minutes had passed. But the internal timer in the chamber read 39. He reached for the stop control, but the system had locked itself, the screen flashing, session in progress. He pulled the power cable, yet the machines stayed alive, humming faintly as if drawing energy from somewhere else. The signal steadied at 19 H-stat. The sound had found its own heartbeat. Ellen began to tremble, though the room's temperature held constant at 22 degrees CI. Her breath grew heavier, lips cracked, the veins at her temples throbbing beneath her skin. The vibration spread through her body, a deep, encompassing pulse, as though the heart of something enormous had enveloped the space around her. Then, without warning, the white noise cut off. Silence. Absolute and total. James tore off his headphones. Inside the chamber, Ellen sat motionless, her head tilted slightly to the right, as if listening to something no one else could hear. On the monitor, the waveform still quivered, faint but alive, tracing a single tone. 19 H dot, 19 H to C, 19 H spot. Like the heartbeat of something that was never human. On the third day, Ellen Rourke descended into the basement alone. James had left the previous night after the system locked itself during the experiment. He'd said he would return in the morning, but Ellen couldn't wait. She needed to understand why the 19HZ signal continued even after the power was cut. The door opened to a silence so deep she could hear the pulse of blood inside her ears. The thick, soundproof walls were veiled in a fine layer of dust. Overhead, the fluorescent light flickered once, then died, leaving only a thin glow seeping in from the hallway through the crack of the door. Ellen sat in the chair. No headphones, no system. She only wanted to feel the absolute silence the 1979 team had once described. For the first few minutes, everything unfolded as expected. No sound, no vibration. Even the rhythm of her breathing vanished, as if the air itself had been drawn out of the room. Ellen closed her eyes and counted her heartbeat, but at 4, the sound stopped. Her heart still beat, but she could no longer hear it. The emptiness spread through her body. She couldn't tell if she was breathing fast or slow, or if she was hearing through her ears or through memory. Time began to dissolve. No longer a steady stream, but a smudged impression. Everything inside the chamber became motionless, except for the faint, fog-like light trembling around her outline. Ellen looked up at the ceiling camera. The red indicator light was off. Perhaps James had disconnected the feed, or the system had shut itself down. Yet in the observation mirror across the wall, she noticed something wrong. Her reflection's head was tilted differently, its eyes open wider, staring at her, not merely reflecting her. She stepped closer. The surface was icy. Her movements echoed with a half-second delay. Ellen stood still. The reflection stood still too, but when she turned away, the figure in the mirror did not. It remained facing her. She backed away, trying to steady herself, scribbling a quick note into her journal, but the page was blank. The ink had sunk into the paper, leaving only faint gray veins. Ellen tightened her grip on the pen, her hand trembling, her eyes drawn to the microphone on the desk. The indicator light was blinking. No one had turned it on. In the control room, the recording monitor flickered to life by itself. James wasn't there. The feed showed Ellen seated motionless in the chair. Each frame stretched unnaturally long, as if the film reel had snagged between seconds. The timestamp read 32:44, then jumped straight to 33:59, skipping everything in between. A dim shadow appeared behind Ellen. No clear shape, only a slow, shifting mass, the vague outline of something human dissolving into light. When Ellen bent over her notebook, the shadow took one step closer, then vanished as she lifted her head. She sat back in the chair and closed her eyes. A dense, heavy hum filled her skull. Not sound, but the presence of sound, pressing from the inside out. Her chest tightened. The weight grew deeper until she couldn't tell if it was the air itself or someone's hand resting there. Outside the glass, the video feed glitched, froze, then displayed no signal. The screen went black. When the system's autosave triggered hours later, it preserved only a single fragment of audio. 3 slow, evenly spaced knocks. And Ellen's faint whisper, blurred and nearly swallowed by the void. "I think I can hear them. Nee. Eyo." The next morning, James O'Neill returned to the basement. Ellen was gone. Only a half-played tape reel spun slowly on the machine. The display reading, "Session continues, 41:2." He pressed the headphones to his ears. No voice, only a deep, droning hum, and somewhere within it, faint and far away, a steady pattern of knocks. 3 of them, 20 seconds apart. James checked the room. The door was still locked from the outside. When he opened it, fluorescent light spilled in, revealing disturbed dust on the floor. The chair sat where it always had, but the headphones lay broken on the ground. The cable snapped. On the wall behind the chair were 3 round indentations, evenly spaced, as if something had struck from inside. He touched one of the marks. The surface was cold, vibrating faintly, like a buried heartbeat pulsing through stone. He pulled his hand back, scanning the room. No trace of Ellen, no sign she had ever left. The air vents were silent, the climate system powered down since yesterday. When he turned toward the control desk, the microphone inside the chamber flickered to life. The red rec light blinked, though no one had activated it. The external speaker hissed, then played back the live feed. 3 hollow knocks. Thud, thud, thud. Echoing from the very room James had just exited. The rhythm was precise, heavy, resonating from deep within the concrete. He froze, eyes fixed on the one-way glass. Something moved in the dim corner. A figure, faint and motionless against the wall, its head tilted as if listening. The shape was indistinct, just a blur of darkness shaped like a person. A cold ripple ran through his spine. James slammed the main light switch on, and the figure vanished. But the sound continued. James grabbed a handheld microphone and tapped 3 times in reply. 3 seconds later, from the other side of the wall, came 3 identical knocks, perfect in rhythm and tone. Not delayed, not echoed, a response. He tried again. This time, only 2 knocks. From within, 2. Not an echo, something deeper, emerging from inside the wall itself. James crept forward, pressing his ear against the foam padding. Nothing. Then suddenly, a single violent bang erupted inches from his head, throwing him backward. The desk microphone toppled, shrieking through the speakers in a long metallic wail, a sound like steel being torn apart. When the feedback finally died, another sound emerged. Breathing. Slow, even distinctly female. It sounded like Ellen. Her voice began to thread through the static, whispering words that bent and broke under distortion. James raised the volume, straining to catch fragments between the noise. Still here. He turned to the camera monitors. Nothing. Then, in the lower corner of the screen, a small red dot glowed to life. The recording icon from an old reel. Session 4, 1979. The tape began to play by itself. Grainy black and white footage appeared, time-stamped 40 years ago. A woman sat in the center of the room, her face obscured, her body trembling. Behind her, 3 faint circular bulges formed in the wall, as though something on the other side were knocking outward, pushing the concrete to breathe. James fast-forwarded. At the 40-0 mark, the footage froze, flickered, and then cut to another frame. Ellen, in the same chair, same position, same angle. The light strobed, merging both images, the woman from 1979 and Ellen, 2 layers of time bleeding together. From the speakers came another 3 knocks, deeper, heavier, vibrating through the glass like the pulse of something waking up. James rushed to the breaker panel, reaching for the switch. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the corridor. In that blackness, the knocking continued. Steady, relentless. 3 beats per minute. Like the heartbeat of something newly awakened. When the emergency lights finally flickered on, one monitor still glowed, showing a single line of text. Session repeat, 40-0. And from the speakers, Ellen's voice drifted through, hoarse, distant, almost buried beneath the hum. Don't open the wall. They never left. No. 40 minutes after the emergency system activated, room B7 fell back into complete silence. James O'Neill sat before the control desk, his hands trembling slightly. Every piece of electronic equipment was dead. Only the old tape recorder kept turning, the tape sliding slowly across the head, producing a dry, crackling sound. He listened. The background hum was gone. In its place came 3 knocks, familiar, steady. 3 knocks per minute. No longer buried beneath the static, but clear, deep, as if coming from beneath the floor itself. James picked up his flashlight and stepped into the Ganzfeld room. The air was heavy, almost solid. The wall where Ellen had sat was cracked, 3 circular dents slowly expanding, opening like breaths. On the floor lay her headphones and notebook, half buried in dust. On the last page, her handwriting was crooked, the ink blurred by moisture. The sound isn't in the ears. It's in the head. And the head is in the room. He turned the next page, blank. No sign Ellen had ever left. Back in the control room, James tried to rewind the tape. As it spun backward, Ellen's faint image appeared, sitting motionless in the chair, hands on her lap, head tilted slightly to the right. The mic indicator still glowed, though the system had no power. The timestamp read 0:39:52. He waited for the 40th minute, the point where every recording before had stopped. 39:58, 39:59, 40:0. The screen went black. James nudged the control to play a few seconds more. Nothing. He was about to shut it off when, suddenly, the screen flickered. A single frame appeared, Ellen's face staring straight into the camera. Her eyes wide, hollow. Her lips moved. No sound came out, yet the mic levels danced. The frequency bar showed 19 Hz, steady. Then her voice came through the speaker, soft, whispering, almost against his ear. "I'm still here." At that moment, the wall inside the Ganzfeld room groaned, cracking as if concrete strained from within. Dust fell from the ceiling. James stumbled back, staring at the soundproof wall bulging outward. 3 more knocks echoed, thud, thud. Then, silence. Everything stopped. The recorder shut itself off. The tape rolled to the end, hissing faintly. James bent down to pick it up, but when the beam of his flashlight crossed the label, a new line of handwriting had appeared beneath the original. Session 5, Rourke. A cold breeze passed through the sealed room, though there were no windows. The camera system flicked back to life, showing live footage. The Ganzfeld chamber stood empty. No Ellen. No James. Only the chair and the blinking microphone. The control monitor displayed an automatic prompt. Session in progress, 001. The frequency meter began to rise. 19 H dis, steady. Then a second pulse appeared, slower, weaker, syncing with the first, like 2 heartbeats aligning. When maintenance arrived the next morning, they found the door to room B7 locked from the inside. No one was there. Only a single tape lay on the console, exactly 40 minutes 0 seconds long, In its final second, a woman's voice whispered, faint, trembling, but unmistakable. "If anyone hears this, don't let the room go silent." Then the file restarted automatically. 3 slow, steady knocks echoed once more, stretching on without end, like the heartbeat of the place itself. Now, Gus,